What you're about to hear could scare the living daylights out of you. I just want to warn you and prepare you so you know. In a moment, Steve Shippey back with us. We'll be talking about his incredible work, his documentary series, his show, Haunting in the Heartland, when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. George Noory back with you. Steve Shippey back with us as well, filmmaker, paranormal expert. Steve is the host of the Travel Channel show Haunting in the Heartland. He grew up in a small town near Saginaw, Michigan, and literally was the kid living in the creepy house on the corner. He was a victim of a severe haunting, actually witnessed several apparitions, and after investigating his own situation, he discovered a shocking truth. The previous owners had been brutally murdered. Shippey has produced and directed countless feature films and documentaries, including A Haunting on Hamilton Street, A Haunting on Dice Road, and A Haunting on Brockway Street. He investigates haunted locations to uncover the truth. Steve, it's a wonder you haven't been hurt yet. Well, welcome back.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Everything good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh, I keep thinking every time I see your bio about Saginaw, Michigan, I grew up in Detroit and would get up to Flint every once in a while. It's a great area. Great area.
Yeah, absolutely.
You still have friends up that way?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm still in Saginaw.
Was it this episode at your house that got you into this?
Into the paranormal, absolutely. Having that experience and being around the paranormal at that age. And also I had an aunt that was a really well-known medium in the Detroit area. And so kind of, obviously from that experience and that influence, certainly.
Now, you've dealt with a lot of cases, and one of them we're going to talk about tonight is called the Gainesville Ripper. How did that come about to you?
Well, I guess to make a long story short, we were approached about taking on this dark case. By we, I mean Cindy Kaza and I. And Cindy and I had investigated the Ed Gein case, Ed Gein, the real psycho. And so after Cindy and I took on such a dark case of a notorious killer like that, we were chosen to take on a case once again with another sadistic, brutal murderer that is still said to wreak havoc in the afterlife. So we were brought in to investigate.
Cindy, of course, being the psychic medium that she is, right?
Absolutely.
The case of the Gainesville Ripper occurred back in the 1990s, as a matter of fact. It was a horrible situation in Gainesville, Florida, right, with a fellow by the name of Danny Rawling. He was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I'm convinced, Steve, his father created this sickness in this poor young man.
I completely agree. As we uncovered all the layers of Danny Rawling and realized the trauma that he went through, how bad, he was essentially tortured as a child, beaten severely, mentally abused, physically abused, and even Danny's grandfather had actually cut his wife's throat in front of Danny's father. So you could see where kind of that awfulness went into Danny's father and then thus into him, and it's generational. I mean, it's just such a disturbing story.
The fellow is Danny Rawling, and his father was a police officer, told the kid when he was little he never wanted him to be born. You're right, he tortured him. And didn't he kill his dog while the little boy was holding it?
Yes, he did.
Oh, my God.
Yes, he did.
So this kid grows up and does the same thing to people. How many people did he kill? He was a serial killer. He murdered, 4 or 5 people?
Actually, it was 8 total.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, because, come to find out that everybody really thought that it was the murders in Gainesville, that was all that he had done, but he had actually murdered 3 people in his hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana, and there's a lot of suspicion that there were more victims.
Gosh. What did you uncover anything differently than what some people had already known about this individual?
I mean, definitely we had learned a lot of different pieces of information by interviewing Danny Rawling's fiance, hearing first-hand accounts from her. And what we were really diving into was the paranormal aspect of this case, because there were people experiencing activity in certain areas that they really believed to be Danny Rawling. So that was kind of our primary focus, but at the same time we were looking to kind of peel back the layers and dig deep into what actually he had done and why he felt that it wasn't him actually doing it, that he believed he was possessed by a demonic force.
He was executed by lethal injection in 2006, and at that point, people thought this was the end of him. Maybe it isn't, is it?
You know, I don't believe it was. I don't believe it was.
But these demonic forces that he blames compelled him to murder. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, he had referred to a spirit named Gemini, and you know, through all of his diary recordings that we actually play in the documentary, some of them. But he recorded countless recordings, drawings, and writing that he believed, and told his fiancée as well that he was not in control, that something else would take him over. He called this demon Gemini and blamed basically demonic forces for this behavior. That was what he was trying to say.
And when Cindy was on the case with you, what were some of the things she felt?
Okay, so Cindy had said repeatedly that she had never encountered a case like this, and I've worked a lot with her, and what really amazed me was she just kept saying over and over, I've never dealt with anything that is this manipulative. She believed at one point she was definitely talking to Danny, then she felt that she was being tricked. It really affected her severely, and then ultimately, she concluded that there definitely was an inhuman and demonic presence while we were investigating.
I saw a picture of him. He was about 37, 38 years old in this photograph and looked like a normal guy. Sometimes these serial killers have this certain look to them. He didn't at all.
Yeah, no, he did. In fact, to me, he always seemed like he looked sad. That's kind of a meek individual and always had, sad kind of looking eyes, which is interesting.
What, in your investigation, did you come up with any conclusions?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we started off the investigation in Gainesville, Florida, and investigating the campsite where Danny would hide. He was homeless. He was living in a tent, deep in the woods. But then he would go out at night, and this is when he would target his victims, and do the graphic and horrible things that he did, and then return to this campsite. He would sit there by the fire. He would make his recordings, even record songs, leaving messages to his father and other people, trying to say he wasn't in control. And so we were there. We definitely made contact. We had a lot of hits on our meters. Cindy was picking up on what she believed to be his spirit. And she kind of hit on a couple of things about his inadequacies, if you will, and then that seemed to really aggravate the situation.
How did they catch the guy, Steve?
Well, long story short, he was involved in so many things. In fact, right now I have this huge file in front of me. He was involved in petty theft. He was involved in robberies. And ultimately, it was his behavior in that sense that led the police to go out into the woods there looking for the suspects, and then they ultimately found a tent and realized that these items here in the tent has to be related to the Gainesville Ripper. And some of the other, homeless people that kind of camped out in that area gave the police the information on who he was, and during a robbery, as they were pursuing him, he was caught. And with this evidence, there was no getting out of it. There was no denying it was him.
Did anybody ever testify or say, he was a nice guy or average guy or anything like that?
Not necessarily. Nobody really came to his defense in that. He was always known to be strange. And really, when you dig into his past, and again, with all these files here in front of me, I see, so many different accounts. He basically had that serial killer upbringing, if you will. He was killing small animals, torturing little animals. He started doing voyeurism even in his early teens, watching people through the window. So There were so many warning signs that this man was a ticking time bomb. I mean, it was all there.
What do you think about the demonic excuse as opposed to knowing what his father did to him when he was a little boy?
So I have a couple of different theories on that. I mean, certainly at some point, I do believe he was involved in some occult behavior, as much as I've researched the case. I do believe he was playing around with certain things. That certainly could have been the entry point. But, even beyond that, you have to kind of wonder sometimes if somebody is capable of doing these type of deeds, and he's claiming that he's doing it because of demonic possession. In some way, one could think, could he have actually created the demonic possession by doing it? Because ultimately he's calling in a demon, giving it a name, and then committing these acts in the name of.
You went to his home in Shreveport, Louisiana when he was a little kid, right?
Yes, we did.
What happened there?
Well, first of all, when we left Gainesville, we felt, okay, all roads point back to his hometown. We have to go there. We have to get more information, get more interviews, and try to go to this house. We had no idea if the people who currently own the house would even entertain the thought of even talking to us or doing an interview, much less letting us investigate there. We get there to find Sheila Jackson, the current owner, just a fantastic lady. And, we asked if we could speak to her. And
did she know about the history of the house?
She did. She did. To her, it was a house they could afford. They didn't think it was that big of a deal. It was over and done with. She would say the neighbors certainly didn't forget. People wouldn't even walk on the same side of the street for the longest time. And they didn't have any problems. They lived there, for quite some time with no issue. But then she tells us that right around Thanksgiving of 2006, just like a switch, paranormal activity starts happening in their house. And what's interesting about that is he was executed only a few weeks earlier.
October 25th, 2006.
Yes. And then, she started to give me a tour of the house, and when she began to tell me what was happening to her and her husband, it was atrocious. I mean, they were being physically attacked.
Wow.
Yeah, it was horrible. So immediately she was asking us, will you investigate? So, of course, we were like, absolutely, and we just jumped right on into it.
Could it have been him in the spirit world?
That was my theory to begin with, and as I told her, I was like, I definitely believe you are having these experiences. Let us investigate and try to find out who it may be. It may not even be Danny, because you never know, what you're dealing with on the other side. But it became clear and pretty evident early into the investigation that we thought we were dealing with the spirit of Danny, and it also seemed that there was something else there that was much more powerful than what he could ever be as a human spirit.
It's been 15, 16 years since you were in that house. Do you think she's still in there, the owner?
No, this was recently with Danny Rolling when we were at his house.
Oh, you were? Okay, so you didn't go there right after he died. This was
No.
Okay. Is she still in that house, though?
Yes, she is still in that house.
Why didn't she just sell it and get out of there?
I asked her that, and and she just told me that they just simply couldn't afford to. And one of the things that she showed me that really shocked me, we were in mid-conversation, and she said, right here where we're standing in the kitchen, this is where Danny Rolling shot his father. And then she points up and says, right there's the bullet hole. And plain as day, there's a bullet hole right through the cabinet door. I reached up, I opened it, you could see the bullet exit and everything.
Nobody patched it or anything?
Nobody patched it. It's exactly as it was when this happened in the 90s. It was unbelievable.
Do you think when you were in the house, did you sense anything?
Absolutely. When I first came in there was a really, really heavy feeling. I mean, you often hear that when you talk to a paranormal investigator. But it really was. It was very stagnant, very dense. The house seemed unusually dark, even though there were a lot of windows with blinds that were cracked open. You could see that Sheila was affected. You could just tell. She was kind of, on edge in a way. You could tell that she had been worn down from whatever was there, and you just felt like you were being watched, literally. I mean, every room she took me to, it's as if something kind of was following us around. Did
you bring in a Catholic demonologist as well?
Yes, we did, Michael Salerno.
What made you do that?
Well, I've known Michael for a while, and any time that we get into a case that we truly believe is demonic, when we've vetted it to the point where that's our true belief, we try to bring in somebody that could try to bring some type of resolve, and in this case, it was a minor rite of exorcism.
And what did he sense?
Well, as soon as, we basically spoke to him throughout the entire case, and we were giving him all the information about what we were experiencing, and of course he's looking for the telltale signs of the demonic, and once we knew and he believed that we knew this is what was happening, we brought him in right away. Right when we walked into the house, he looked at me and said, "Yeah, it's here. Let's get down to business right now. Let's get this started."
And is Danny Rawling still hanging out there, you think?
I don't believe so. I've reached out to Sheila recently, and she even left me a voicemail, which actually plays at the end of the documentary, Scream, the True Story, and she leaves a pretty wonderful message saying that nothing is happening. But we always know that it's possible to come back, but it's been a few months now, well, actually several months now, and so far it's clear.
How do people see the documentary Scream?
It's on the streaming platform Discovery Plus.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good. How many have you done now? 10?
Well, I've done 10 of my own independent documentaries and 2 of the Shock Doc series for Discovery Plus. The first one was Ed Gein, the Real Psycho, and this one that was just released Friday is Scream, the True Story, because, of course, Danny Rawlings, the Gainesville Ripper, was the inspiration for the screenplay Scream, the movie.
Is Ed Gein the one who cut the skin off people and would wear it?
Yes.
That's what Silence of the Lambs was based on, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Silence of the Lambs, and the character Norman Bates in Psycho were all inspired.
Now, was Ed Gein also abused as a kid, Steve?
He absolutely was. He was abused actually by his mother, and she was also extremely religious, but using
in a sick way.
In a sick way, absolutely. Not the proper context, and she instilled a dark hatred in him toward women, just all kinds of masochistic type behavior, and again, unfortunately, another tortured soul.
And I guess Ted Bundy, same thing. Something happened to him as a kid.
Yeah. There's no question. I believe that when it comes to these notorious killers that surface, and then sadly part of you thinks how many are out there roaming that have never been caught. But, from the one, but history shows and data shows that there's quite a pattern that seems to be in the childhood.
They seem to be lashing out at the people who abuse them through other people.
Yes, yeah, and just repeating the cycle, essentially.
Stephen, in your house, when you found out that a couple people had been murdered, did your parents didn't know that? There was a lot of rumor and innuendo about that, and a lot of different things, and people didn't really want to talk about that. And I just kind of feel that they, much like Sheila and other people that have a property, they kind of look at it as that it's something that happened, and it's best just not to talk about it. And many people don't consider the paranormal side of things, and and even during that time frame, and sadly, even now, even though it's much more common that people are open about it, back then it was extremely taboo. Sure.
To be saying your house was haunted or you were dealing with spirits.
And this was near Saginaw, Michigan?
Yeah, north of Saginaw, Michigan. Yeah.
I mean, they hardly have any murders there, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it's definitely not a common thing, but sadly, unfortunately, it does happen everywhere.
When we come back, I want to talk with you about hauntings in general, Steve, and where you think this is all headed. The website I have for you is the Travel Channels. Is that it?
Yeah, absolutely. TravelChannel.com.
Super. We've got that linked up at coasttocoastam.com. His Travel Channel show is called Haunting in the Heartland. His doc series, Shock Docs, Scream, the True Story, about the Gainesville Ripper, just a unbelievable case of a fellow by the name of Danny Rawling. He was born in 1954, and at age 52, he was executed. We'll take your calls next hour with Steve Shippey as we talk about hauntings. Jump on. Maybe you could share a story or a question or two. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. George Norrie with you along with Steve Shippey. Steve, one of our listeners sent me a story. You're going to love this. You ready?
Absolutely.
Unexplainable things happened in the Tacoma, Washington house where serial killer Ted Bundy grew up. So many things, in fact, that a contractor hired to remodel the home penciled biblical scriptures on the walls and brought in 2 pastors to bless the house. The contractor, Casey Clopton, said, "I'm not one to believe a lot of this stuff, but this house made me a believer." Gosh, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it certainly is. And there seems to be quite an increase of paranormal activity within the last couple of years, which is very interesting.
Indeed, indeed. Now, what do you think is happening? What is the other side as far as you're concerned? I mean, you've covered enough of these stories now to come up with your own conclusions.
I definitely have several, different theories. And a lot of what the research shows us with paranormal investigation currently, I do believe a lot of that. I do believe that there is residual hauntings. I do believe, of course, there's intelligent hauntings, human spirit that are trapped here for whatever reason, haven't moved on. And I definitely believe that there is a much darker realm, an human side to hauntings.
Are hauntings all evil?
In my opinion, no. I don't necessarily believe that all hauntings are evil.
But those that are, they're pretty darn bad, aren't they?
Definitely. If something is true evil by definition, I mean, sometimes people will kind of generalize some of these things, and they say, well, there's a really nasty spirit here. It breaks things. It trips us. It pushes us. Can pull your hair. Do things to purposely scare the daylights out of you. Now, that doesn't mean that it's evil per se or inhuman. People can be jerks in the afterlife, just like they are in real life, the type of person that
Sure.
they are. But something evil is a whole different animal, so to speak.
How often do you come across these kind of demonic forces when you do an investigation?
Well, if you would have asked me this about 5-10 years ago, I would have said it would probably be in the 5% category. And sometimes, authentically, without any shadow of a doubt, demonic, sometimes around 2% of these cases. Now I'm seeing more like 25%.
Huge increase.
Yeah, a huge increase. Absolutely.
What's fueling it? What do you think?
Well, there's several different theories. I guess one theory that I kind of have as of now, you kind of think, well, these demonic beings like to prey on people's weaknesses, of course. I mean, that's, something that we all know about that realm. And you think about people's mind states currently. You think about what the lockdowns have done and the isolation, the fear, the anxiety. Everyone's just kind of unsure right now what's happening, health with COVID, that type of thing, fear of all of that. There's a lot of unrest. There's financial issues. And I feel that, when things like this happen, it kind of opens a door, and on top of that, a lot of people, unfortunately, are dealing with these situations, with substance abuse and different things, and of course, that kind of weakens the spirit, and that's kind of another door that you can open in that sense. So I do believe that, kind of our current state is only heightening the paranormal realm.
Are you a believer in reincarnation, Steve?
I wouldn't say that I'm not. I'm open to the possibility. I've definitely seen some fascinating cases where children are being interviewed and they're just describing their past life and people that were in it, and sometimes even knowing different languages. I mean, I don't know how you explain that. It's remarkable. Is it possible? Certainly.
If it happens, how do you explain what happens to souls like Rawling, for example, Danny Rawling, the Gainesville killer?
Now, in relation to...
I mean, what happens if reincarnation is real? What happens to that soul? Does it get reincarnated, and does it become a serial killer again?
Definitely one would hope not. I would hope that there would be some kind of law of the universe that wouldn't allow something like that to take place. But then again, who knows the rules, so to speak. I mean, we all know that energy, as they say, it can't be created, nor can it be destroyed. So it really does make you wonder, where does that soul go? I mean, of course, different religions have certain beliefs that it's very cut and dry. Somebody passes, they immediately go to judgment, they immediately go where they're supposed to. But, there's many different religions that have many different theories. And, at the end of the day, it's great to have faith no matter what, absolutely. But we don't know everything. We just simply do not have all the answers. And I guess that's kind of where the term paranormal comes from. We see things that we don't understand. And there's a lot of different theories. I mean, there's some people out there that will tell you that anything paranormal is demonic, based on the religious lens in which they look at it through, and that these spirits are just in fact tricking you because they have that vast intelligence, and they will make you think you're contacting Aunt Susie or Uncle Bob that passed away in the house, and maybe it's not at all. So there's a lot of different theories, and certainly at different points you have to wonder and question who you may be contacting.
Steve, when you go to some of these haunted houses, do you ever think that you're going to bring these things back to your place?
Well,
they attach themselves to you?
There's definitely a concern, for that situation, and I think I would at least like to hope that everybody who does this always keeps that in mind, that it's a possibility. But there's a lot of different things that you can do. I guess it depends on, your faith system, your belief system, whether that be if you want to be into prayer, cleansing, going to a spiritual cleanser. We all have our different ways. But at the end of the day, personally, I think all of it is helpful, but I think a lot of it's inside you, going into a home or a location, being spiritually strong, mentally strong, and I think that plays a huge part of it.
Do most of these hauntings revolve around somebody who has died, either in the house or somewhere tragically?
It does. I would have to say, in my opinion, from my personal years of doing this, it seems that more often than not, yes, that is the case. And then there's the other cases that are truly a mystery. Just a mystery. You do the research on the house. Nobody's ever died there. In fact, sometimes it's a brand new home, that a family built or had purchased from another family that was 4 or 5 years old. Nobody had ever passed. Nobody has any explanation for how and where this comes from. And, of course, then the theory at that point is spiritual attachment to somebody who brought it home. Then you have to kind of do your diligence and ask, the hard questions. Have you guys been messing around with the occult at all? Have you, used a spirit board?
Ouija boards, yeah.
Yeah, things of that nature. And then and sometimes they are very honest, and they tell you yes. And then you kind of figure out where maybe it came from. And then sometimes you believe wholeheartedly that they have no idea what you're talking about. They would never touch such a thing, and you just got to wonder.
Have you ever seen an apparition yourself, physically seen something?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
What happened?
Well, I mean, there's, many different accounts. I think, the one that really stands out to me that I'll never forget. Well, yeah, it's hard to really forget any of them, but there was an instance once where I was actually, and this is pretty recent, so it's kind of more fresh in the mind, but I was staying at an Airbnb, and, there was quite a feeling in this old house. Right when I walked in, I kind of thought, man, this place seems to have something a little unusual about it, but, I'm not doing that today. I'm just, staying here, and I'm traveling, so I'm not going to be too concerned about that. And about, 2:30 in the morning, I had heard something near the bed, and I kind of sat up a little bit, and I'm trying to think, what is that sound? And I realized that what I was hearing was there was a large armoire right there, and something was kind of playing with the handle, and I just kept hearing it jiggling. So I turned the flashlight on my phone, and I'm looking around, and as soon as I do, I see it move just a little bit, and then it stops. So I'm staring at this, and I'm thinking, there's no logical explanation for this, but I'm not going to try to communicate. I don't really want to do that right now. I'm just going to try to go back to sleep, wake up, and get back on the highway. Well, about 30 minutes later, I heard something in the adjacent room, so this time I got up and I turned the corner, and what it looked like to me was kind of a very fast-moving, wavy form that seemed to kind of have its own light. Now, I would say it was transparent, but not completely, but it looked more like a partial apparition. And then it just literally shot across the room, and before it went to where the wall was, it just kind of vanished. And this room was pitch black, so it was kind of astounding to see something that was emitting its own light.
Until you moved into your house as a youngster, were you a believer in these things?
Well, I was so young at the time that I really didn't have a belief system, in any way, I guess you could say, when it comes to something like this.
Were you glad to get out of that house?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely was. But it left me with a fascination to find out, what it was. It's very interesting when you're at that age and you see that your family, your parents specifically, are going out of their way to tell you that that's not possible. These things aren't real, and then
right, you don't know what you're seeing or anything like that.
Right, and then when you see it crack, and you realize at one point, everyone comes to the table more or less, and now it's out in the open that they do believe. That really shifts your mind at that point, because you're like, okay, wait a minute, this, you told me this is something that couldn't happen, but now you're saying that it is. Now you're admitting that it's happening. So at that point, you kind of start to question everything. Your whole mind kind of opens up to, what you think is not necessarily what it is. And that just kind of led to a fascination for me.
Your co-host, Cindy Kaza, the psychic medium.
Yeah.
What does she say about these things? What does she think they are?
I really don't know her theory, to that sense. I mean, typically when I work with Cindy, we are right into the case, and she's tuning in, whether it be through remote viewing, or, several other tactics that she has, and she's tuning into the energy, who's here, why, what do they want, that type of thing. But I would be very interested to hear, her theory on the afterlife, I guess, in general. I
mean, there's definitely something happening here. There's no question about it.
There's no doubt. I mean, in poll after poll, they do it every year, and actually the numbers actually increase. The most recent poll, and you typically hear this stuff around Halloween, where these large news broadcasting, they're always kind of putting something, I guess, Halloweenish, so to speak, in the media at that time, and they always poll adult Americans. Who believes in ghosts, essentially, is the question. And the most recent poll was around 54% of the adult population. Now, explain that to me. 50%, actually over, but half of the adults in the United States that took this poll believe in ghosts. How can you possibly say? I mean, what would you say? That was a mass hallucination? And talks about spirits and ghosts. This goes back as far as text exists. As far as man has written down their experiences, there's always talks of the spirit realm.
If you had an opportunity to interview Danny Rawling prior to his lethal injection, the serial killer we've been talking about, what would you ask him?
I think, number one, I wouldn't allow him to deflect the blame of the things that he did. But I would definitely ask some very hard questions to him about this demon, as he called it, this spirit Gemini. I would want to know, can he describe this entity? What would this entity tell you? When did it first come into your life? When did you start having these urges? I would be wanting to know more from a paranormal standpoint, asking certain questions to really try to figure out, is this something that really came to him, or indirectly did he conjure something by literally manifesting and doing these evil deeds in the name of evil, which will certainly conjure it.
And what do you think triggered him? I mean, what was he, about 36 years old when he started the killings?
Yeah, I think what triggered him was the things that took place in his past. I feel that, like, for instance, let's talk, about the voyeurism. Imagine, a kid's 12, 13 years old, and he's going around the neighborhood, and he's peeking in windows and watching people through their windows. Now, his ex-fiancée had an explanation from Danny, so we're getting this information secondhand, but basically directly through her, that he was doing it in a sense because his family life was so bad and so terrible that he would go just watch other families just living their life, watching the TV, eating dinner, trying to live vicariously, so to speak, to have some sense of that. But then somewhere down the road, perhaps as he grew older and different things take over, that voyeurism took a much darker path, which of course we know now is leading into how he's known to be the Gainesville Ripper.
Unbelievable case. Just how they're created and made, though, is something that psychologists, I guess, and psychiatrists just jump into, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, there's no doubt that, the research clearly shows, and not always. Once in a while there is just a shocking case where a serial killer is discovered, and they can't really seem, like Jeffrey Dahmer is a good example. There was no abuse in that case. His father's, couldn't understand where this came from. He was never beaten as a child, but yet he exhibited all the traits of a classic serial killer as a child. Now, I think, personally, the abuse that Danny suffered, it mentally damaged him. And beyond that, he was beat horribly, and even beat as an infant. So you got to wonder, could there have been some brain damage?
Well, that's true. That's
yes,
possible.
Perhaps frontal lobe damage or something that also completely changed his mind. And you got to wonder if that's a possibility.
Do you think it was that fight with his father in May of 1990 that triggered the murders later?
I definitely do. I think, when he had gone as far as to go to that level of violence and then actually, the murders in Shreveport, he was believed to kill 3 people in Shreveport, Louisiana. At that point, I feel like for him there was no turning back. I feel that typically when individuals like this, when they cross that line, they can't go back. Once they draw blood,
that's it.
It's a compulsion, that they can't stop feeding.
Steve, we're going to take a break and come back and take an hour of phone calls with you next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Noory with you, Steve Shippey with us this hour as we take your phone calls. Steve, are you glad you took this path that you have taken?
Yeah, I definitely am. I think it helps me in my own way with trying to understand these things, and I guess more importantly, it's evolved to helping other people.
You're a rap singer too, right?
Yeah, I've done music for many years.
Now, how did the paranormal haunting investigations occur for you for the Travel Channel? How did that happen?
Well, so essentially, after releasing 10 full-length paranormal investigation documentaries independently, basically somebody had viewed one of the films and felt that I would be a great addition to the family over there.
And you are.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was approached, and simply it was put to me that we really love what you do, and we would like you to continue being you and doing what you do, but we would like you to do it here, and we could help you branch out and be able to travel the country, helping people besides what you're doing, kind of in your hometown area.
What has been one of the most emotional things for you, Steve, when you've been on these hauntings and these trips with some of the owners? Do they break down?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. When you start asking, some of the harder questions and trying to figure out, what's going on, when they start to describe how their life has changed, what it's done to the family, a lot of times it will cause a lot of issues between family members, people that experience a haunting. It's a very devastating thing. People sometimes will divorce because of it. It changes the whole dynamic. It changes them as people. And I think at those points when you're asking these questions and you're saying things like, how long has this been happening? What were you guys like before you lived here? And I think at that point it's kind of when they really realize the gravity, because you know how it is when things start to happen to you. Sometimes it's gradual, and you're dealing with it for years, and then
and then it takes jumps on you.
Yeah, you realize how far it's gone.
When you were in the Danny Rollins house when he was a kid, do you think you made contact with him?
I personally believe that Danny, the spirit of Danny, I believe was in that house along with whatever else was in that house. There were definitely multiple responses that we're getting on these meters. Whatever was at the house, if we were to say it was one force, it was able to set off all the devices simultaneously in different rooms. We experienced really bizarre things. At one point, it sounded like something slammed onto the ceiling. The house didn't have a second floor, and it sounded like something smashed on the roof and then literally drug across the ceiling. You know, the audio picked it up. Everybody that was there, the crew, everybody heard it. Things that just made no sense. It exhibited a power that we aren't used to seeing.
No, not at all. Not at all. And do you think the spirit at the house was the baby, the young boy, or was it the adult, Danny Rawling?
You know, personally, as far as how I believe, I would believe that it would be the current Danny that, you know, when he lost his life, it would be that same individual. That's how I would see that.
All right, let's take some calls for you. Let's go to Barbara in Phoenix, Arizona to get us started. Hello, Barb. Go ahead.
Hi, George. Thank you for taking my call this evening. I'm a first-time caller, but I listen to you all the time.
Well, thank you.
I was intrigued to give you a call and to join the conversation. My take and my experiences with my own paranormal friendly ghosts, if you will, I've never really experienced anything demonic. My take on it is that your own personal spirit speaks to the spirit that is coming and speaking with you. I was also told that when you do have a spirit in your home, in your dwelling, if you are open to the spirit and welcome the spirit will be friendly and be welcoming to you. In addition to that, when you leave the dwelling, if you move, you have to have a conversation with your spirit and say, you know what, this is where you dwell, but I have to leave, and you can't follow me. You have to stay here. But I've enjoyed my time with you, and that's happened to me twice, where I've had two spirits that they've been very friendly to me, a little mischievous, I'll say.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
You know, like sneaking up on me, and you know, when I'm sitting at my desk in my home office, and I see shadows going by, and I have to say, no, I'm busy. I can't play right now. I can't.
Could be worse, Barbara, right?
Excuse me?
Could have been worse, right?
It could have been way worse. So I don't know where I fit into this conversation, but I've had two experiences where my spirits have been friendly to me, and I've enjoyed their company. And then I've had to have that conversation and say, I'm now leaving this residence, and this is where you live, and please do not follow me. So does that fit into your narrative tonight?
That's an interesting possibility. Steve, do these spirits always follow people from place to place?
No, and I agree with a lot of what she's saying. I believe that you had asked me earlier on tonight if I believe that all spirits are bad, and I don't believe that. I think that a human spirit encompasses the soul of a once living human being. So I do believe, as she's saying, that you can rationalize with certain spirits, just like you can a person, and trying to explain to them sometimes that hey, we know that you're here, and we are willing to coexist with you, but, we're going to ask you to maybe quit doing this or that. You're scaring our daughter, or whatever the case may be. And sometimes you can rationalize with them and ask them not to follow you. Does it always work? Not necessarily, because people, again, just like in life, in death, can be not so great people. But, I would like to think the majority of the people in the world are good, and I think that certainly can happen, where you can reason with the spirit by being respectful and receiving respect in return.
Steve, why does it seem that little kids, tend to communicate with these spirits much more able than adults?
Well, I guess me personally, I believe that, as children, we don't have all the filters. We don't see through all the lenses of things that we're, I guess, indoctrinated with later, whether it be certain religions or certain things, or what we're taught here and there and through even television, whatever the case may be. As we grow older, we kind of block ourselves off from being open to all possibilities. And I think it's because they're just seeing life through more of a pure lens at that point. So these things aren't out of the question. And as well, I think spirits are attracted to that as well. Sometimes I believe personally spirits don't want to be revealed just yet, so they'll kind of reveal themselves to people that they think will see them and perhaps interact with them, but won't be trying to force them out of the house, if that makes sense.
First-time caller Randall in Arkansas. Go ahead, Randall.
Yes, speaking on what your guest, Stephen, was saying just now, but also I just want to say, George, thank you so much for taking my call. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. But speaking to the openness of what would perhaps make you more, shall we say, attractive to a spirit, a ghost, a demon, what have you. It's one word, okay? I'm about to blow your mind. It's one word, and that word is bisexuality. You need to make yourself open to all possibilities of these spirits, because I'm here to tell you I've had multiple paranormal experiences, and pardon my crassness, excuse me, but pardon my crassness, but ghosts are horny.
Well, I'm not sure they are, Steve.
I'm not sure what to say about that exactly. But I'm definitely listening.
I've heard cases though of people being abused by spirits. Have you?
Yes, absolutely. And of course, there's the well-known creature that they refer to as the succubus. It also reminds me of that case that that movie was created about, the entity that came out in 1979. I saw that in the mid-'80s as a kid. Definitely scared the hell out of me. But that poor individual, that woman was said to be abused in many different ways by a spirit. In that sort of sense.
And what did you think of the original Exorcist movie?
I thought it was definitely very, very disturbing. But I also think they did a very good job of portraying evil in its sense.
Next up, Jan in Brooklyn, New York, east of the Rockies. Hello, Jan.
Howdy.
Hi.
I got two questions. The first question is, when I've done twice, two friends, they told me I said things, and I don't remember, but I think it had something to do with entity stuff. And sometimes I really believe, because I know the context they told me. I believe sometimes you get these entities, and you don't remember, and you don't know what you're doing. And then the other question is, I'll just ask that question.
Well, let's use that one first. Steve, is it conceivable people lose their memories?
I mean, it is possible, yes. I mean, especially with, I guess, more powerful spirits or darker forces. That is something that has been known to happen in certain cases where people will have they'll experience time loss, don't really recall moments of their day, things like that. Typically, people that are under some form of oppression.
Interesting take. Next up, John in Kansas City, Missouri. Hello, John. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, George. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Always enjoy your shows.
Thank you.
I had a question or two for Steve and a comment. I started having paranormal experiences as a young child, and places I've lived and visited ever since. And I never had anybody talk religion with me or about ghosts or any of that as a kid. When this stuff started happening, it was like just out of the blue. And I'll give you a quick story about a thing that happened to me when I was in first grade with my brothers in second grade. And we lived in a house that hung on the third floor. So we never went to that floor because we knew there was actually the whole house was haunted, but the third floor worse. So we dared each other to go up and touch our landing of the third floor with our hand, and I was the first to do it. and something grabbed me and seized me and was crushing me. And then it let me go, and I told my brother what happened, and he thought I was faking. Like, it didn't happen. So he went up and did it, and it did it to him. And after that, we told our parents about it. It was like the weirdest thing in the world. Whatever it was, it didn't like kids. But I just found that I've been open to paranormal activity ever since. I can go to a hotel, and the hair stands up on the back of my neck, and I've lived at other haunted houses. So my question for Steve is, kids, like say, you already kind of mentioned this, don't have any filters, preconceived notions about it all. But does it automatically make you open to paranormal activity, which is very real, by the way, your entire life?
Are kids more like magnets, Steve?
I think there's some validity to that, certainly, and I do think that, going along with what he's talking about, I do believe that once you do see something paranormal, once you experience something paranormal, I think one of two or both things can happen. You're aware of it now. You know that it's real. You know that it exists. So you are now seeking and hearing and looking for things that the average person might not even notice. That strange sound that happened. Maybe they think it's the house settling or whatever the case may be. So you're more open to realizing something could be around you. And on top of that, I also do believe that spirits seem to know when an individual believes and or has an experience, and I feel like they will be more attracted to that individual than the average person.
Joe, Long Island, New York. Go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, hi. How you doing, Steve? My question would be on the video games. I've heard some cases locally where people were serial killers and they had a habit of playing extensive video games. So that would be my main question, as at least a doorway to opening, a mindset towards the occult. And then also, do you see any activity within 8 objects as well?
Well, without a doubt, I do believe that spiritual attachment, object attachment is certainly a thing. I think that, sometimes a certain object will hold an emotional value to somebody. It meant something to somebody, and I do believe that spirits can certainly attach to an object.
We have a guest named John Zaffis, who's a expert, Stephen, on attached objects, and he is totally convinced, as you just mentioned, that spirits attach themselves to certain things.
Absolutely, yeah. He's, in my opinion, he's basically the leading authority in that division, and I wholeheartedly believe it's a real thing.
Absolutely. Did you know the late Rosemary Ellen Guiley, by any chance?
No, I did not.
You would have loved her. She was one of my co-authors in a book, Talking to the Dead, and was a regular guest on the program, and just an expert on dreams, the unusual, the paranormal. Greatly missed. Now there's a spirit who's out there that I want to communicate with us. Next up, let's go to Joe in Monterey, California. Joseph, take it away.
Thank you for taking my call, George.
Sure.
Okay, Steve, let me introduce myself just briefly. I do a lot of paranormal work from time to time. I also do a lot of exorcisms and past life regression and travel to deal with patterns in past lives and other in between lives as well. What's going on in the astral, how to deal with certain things, and healing work that can be done from there. What I found, and I think this would be interested in you, is that sometimes when people die, and in mass too, like during wars and stuff, there's a lot of souls that perish and they want revenge for being murdered. Now, you're investigating serial killers and people that are really deeply disturbed when they are executed. And I'm not one for capital punishment because I know that they're not going into the light and they will seek vengeance. Do you see any patterns from case to case that there may be a similarity? Not that they're possessing them, but they may have incarnated, or maybe they are possessing them. And yes, I know about hauntings. I was a victim of one haunted from a past life.
And that goes back to my question too, Steve, from Joe, basically, is does the dead, in a very vicious way, continue that?
I absolutely do believe with certain human spirits that the answer would be yes. For instance, I recall when we were investigating the Ed Gein, the farmhouse, where it once stood, and we were investigating there in different places. My teammate Cindy Keza, world-renowned psychic medium, she would sense him and say, oh my God, he's coming toward me with his hands like he wants to choke me. And I remember this moment. I was actually able to capture on my SLS system a figure that approached her with both of its hands out. So even in the other realm, it still has these aggressive and tendencies to want to hurt.
I think you folks have been lucky you haven't been attacked, Steve. We're going to come back and take final calls with you in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. On our next Coast to Coast program, we're going to talk about airlines and 5G and what is the potential danger to airlines. And then William Peters joins us to talk about his experiences with the near-death state. So stick around for that on our next Coast to Coast program. And welcome back to Coast. George Noory here with Steve Shippey, our final segment and final calls. Steve, when you were a little youngster in that house of the double murders, you had a haunting yourself. Can you care to share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of experienced the gamut of different things there. We would see shadowy figures, knocks, footsteps at night, things slamming, ultimately some pushing, things like that, cold spots, many things of that nature.
And did you feel, how old were you?
I was around 6 when I could really start recalling the events.
God, you were just a little kid. That could have been horrible for you.
Yeah, well, it's definitely something that'll change you, certainly.
Back to the calls we go. Let's go next to Lisa in Seattle, Washington. Hello, Lisa. Go ahead.
Hey, love the show.
Thank you.
It might take a second, so give me a minute to tell you about this.
Okay, go ahead.
I visited my mother in heaven. Now, she had died, and I didn't know it because I cut my phone off at night to keep from being disturbed. She died 3 a.m, and at 5 a.m, I woke up with a dream that my mother was living in this big mansion, and I came to visit her there. And it was this lady there taking care of her. I think it was her angel. The Bible said that we have angels. And this lady was, because my mother couldn't speak, she was real sick before she died. But in the dream, she looked like she was about 30 years old. And when I went up there, I told the lady, take care of my mom. I will be back. And when I left, I looked behind me because I was like, who would be nice enough to let us, I had to leave to plan a family get-together. Mm-hmm. And I said, who would be nice enough to let us have our family meeting in this beautiful mansion? And I looked behind me. It was row upon row upon row of mansions. Mansions. And in the Bible it said, I go to prepare a place for you because in my Father's house are many mansions. And this, I saw just tons and tons of mansions. So I'm coming down from the mountain when I left because I knew I had to go plan this family thing. I'm coming down the mountain. Now, when I was on that mountain, it was so bright. No lights, no lamps, nothing. Everything was just bright. And when I started coming down from the mountain back to my home, it got dimmer and dimmer. And by the time I got back, it was like the atmosphere, it was just darker and dim. And I met my sister, and she said, hey, I want to go shopping with you, but I can't go till my husband gets here. And I didn't know what that meant, but it was always something in a dream that will confirm. If it's a dream that's real, remember this, there's always something in that dream that will confirm to you in real life. So I had to go to my house, and then when I finally got my phone on, people said, Mama died. And I said, oh, no. And my sister from Chicago, I live in Seattle, she came from Chicago overnight, and she was here, and she said, I want to go shopping with you to buy Mama's clothes for the funeral, but I can't go till my husband gets here because he's got the credit cards. See, exactly what she told me in the dream. I want to go shopping with you, but we can't go till my husband get here. I didn't know in the dream what it meant, but I guess you know how men are. He didn't trust her with the credit card, so he was coming later, and she had to wait for him. Not only that, the night my mother died, my kids were only 8. My son, now he's autistic, and he feels things. He sees a bad person. When he was a baby at 4, he saw this bad man, and he was a criminal trying to sell me a car that was no good. And my son couldn't even talk. He jumped over the seat and started hitting the man in the head.
Jeez.
What, son? What are you doing? Found out later that man was selling me a car that wasn't even, it was a stolen car. The police came. This man had 3 different IDs. He was a real criminal. And my son just busted across the seat on him. So when my son feels things that don't like people, I listen. So what he did, they stayed up late that night. It was Friday night, and they stayed up. And he drew a picture of a graveyard. You think I'm joking? Up here, we bury people in the graveyard. There are no headstones. They're just on the ground.
Just in the ground.
He grew all of these grassy areas, and it was 3 women. I have 3 sisters, and they were crying. They were in that grassy area that looked just like where we bury her, and they were crying, and up above was 3 angels flying in the air. This kid is 8. Autistic. He didn't speak, so I don't know where he got the idea of angels, and they were flying in the sky.
Well, let's bring Steve in on this. Steve, there's no question, again, kids see things that adults don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they see things that adults don't, and they sense things as well that adults don't.
They picked this up, and he did it in this drawing and stuff like that. Do you think it's his imagination, or do you think he actually saw this vision?
I think it is. I think it is very possible. Going back to something else that she had said too. I mean, even myself throughout my life, I've had many dreams, and it's strange because you know the difference between I guess we'll call it a normal dream or something that means something else, and you don't quite understand what it is, and it could be a week, a day, or 6 months later. Those events will unfold, and it almost feels like a deja vu. And I've always kind of wondered how that is. It makes you wonder if that theory is all things have already happened, and it kind of transcends if that's possible. But I have experienced that personally as well, so I can identify with what she's saying there.
Next up, let's go west. Dana's with us in Federal Way, Washington. Hello, Dana.
Hi, George. Thanks for taking my call.
You're very welcome.
First-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you. Lots of first-timers tonight.
Yeah. So my question for you, Steve, what made you decide to go from investigating the paranormal to investigating these paranormal psychopaths, these serial killers? They're very dark, they're mentally ill individuals in life, and without a shadow of a doubt that they were and are still evil. They have bad intentions they did in life, they probably still will. And with that said, now I know you kind of touched on this earlier, but do you have any specific routines, and I don't want to say rituals, but routines that you do to protect yourself before or after an investigation of that nature? Does anything ever follow you home?
Okay, so definitely I would say that what led me into embarking on these cases is I was approached to investigate, going back to the Ed Gein case, and that can be seen, Ed Gein, The Real Psycho. That documentary is on Discovery Plus, but I was chosen for that case specifically because living in Michigan, I'm near Wisconsin. I've got over 20 years experience investigating the paranormal, and so I was believed to be a very good candidate to work on this case. That was the first time that I've investigated a case like that, and to be honest, I didn't know that I would ever do it again, but because of that investigation, when this case came along, naturally, I was chosen to work on this case, as well as, my partner, Cindy.
Because of your experience.
Exactly. So it kind of just, one case led to another case of that caliber. And yes, she's absolutely right. These people were twisted in life, and obviously they still are. And again, to answer another one of her questions, I definitely have my own routine of keeping attachments away. If certain times I feel like it needs to be amped up a little bit, there's people that I go to that do certain types of cleansings, and there's a whole thing that happens even before I return to where I live.
Next up, we go to Daryl in New York. Welcome to the show. Hello, Daryl.
Yes, speaking.
Hi there. Go ahead, sir.
All right, I have to. Yeah, my name is Dale, though, from Chickawaga, New York,
Uh-huh.
So anyways, what I got to say now, this happened to me when I was 7 years old at my grandmother's farmhouse. Now, it was really weird because it looked like that Mad cartoon, from the Mad magazine, and that curtain or that shade went up and it went wrapped around and around and around, and it went butter, all that. But I knew it seemed real to me. Then when I went outside the next morning, because that bedroom window was so high, and then nobody could have played a joke on me or anything, and that really stung me for years. And then I used to hear things up in the attic. And then another time, this happened 2 years ago. There was a woman. I had my door locked. When I took a little nap in my chair, and I looked up, and then she was sitting there, and then she kept on saying, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And then we had a lightning storm, and then when she heard the thunder, which I heard, she goes, "Can I go into the other room to look out that window? Because I think that's where the sound's coming from." She never came out. Now, how can you explain that? I mean, Steve, can you explain that?
Well, I mean, it sounds like with the experiences that you had, certainly something was trying to get your attention, and that's very common, that a spirit sometimes will do little things like that to show you that they're there. For instance, like you're talking about the curtain. We don't quite understand sometimes what their motive is. We look at it as they want you to know that they're present, and then sometimes the activity will just kind of stop at that. So I guess at that point, the only way you'll really understand more is if you were to start establishing contact, communication, try to get a message, perhaps bring in a medium. But that does happen.
It happens quite a bit, doesn't it, Steve?
Yes, absolutely.
Have you ever heard of anybody physically hurt by an entity?
Yeah, absolutely. There's people that, will be scratched. I've talked to people that have been pushed down the stairs. Hair pulling seems to be something that happens quite often. So, yeah, that does happen. Absolutely.
First-time caller David in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Hello, David.
Hey there. Hey, George. First off, I'm a fellow Lebanese compatriot. And
super.
Thank you for your service. My dad's a World War II vet, and he'll be 95 next month.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Stephen, I have a question for you. You can call me the ultimate skeptic. I'm not here to insult you, but I'm certain you've heard of Randy, the guy that challenges
the amazing Randy,
or even people that do paranormal.
Now, he's dead now. He passed on.
Okay. I mean, I saw some videos a couple of years ago, but my question is, when you watch, I'm certain you're probably aware of what some of the British guys did, where they would set up a person who claimed to have been a medium or into paranormal, and they set things up on the internet that were easily reviewable, that the person who was said to be a medium could come in or into paranormal, and they made things up in almost verbatim. The people that were claiming to be these paranormals or mediums were saying almost everything that these guys had set up on the internet. My question is, when I watch these shows, they speak in vague generalities. How is it you can convince somebody that what you do, and again, I don't know you personally, how do you convince a skeptic like me that what you do is A, that you are able to communicate, and also B, why wouldn't the relatives of these people communicate with the people that they're related to? Like Teresa Caputo has been completely exposed as a fraud, and she gets caught routinely doing that. So my question is, please try to convince me that what you're doing, that you can relate to these people, whether they're a serial killer, whether...
All right, let's give it a try, Steve.
Okay, well, I guess there's a few things I could say about that. I mean,
Well, and you're not a medium, are you?
No. But I mean, have people done that out there? Sure. I'm sure that that's the case. Now, for me personally, as an investigator, I'm, relying on tools, recordings, audio, video, K2 meters, a gamut of, different things. But for me, if I'm working with a medium and we are at a location and they're telling me something is here now, something is over there now, and I'm able to go in that direction and see that either my motion sensors are going off or there's a K2 spike or a temperature drop or something that directly correlates with what they're telling me, and I see this, routinely, I would believe there's certainly legitimacy to that. And as far as trying to, win over a skeptic, that's very hard, to do, because I guess if you haven't had the experience and nothing has happened to you, I could understand a degree of skepticism, of course, So,
well, and Harry Houdini was obsessed with trying to find mediums that were legitimate, and he went nuts, didn't he, trying to do this?
I have heard, some things like that, yeah.
Anyways, we're down to about a minute. How do people watch your shows, Steve?
Well, of course, you can go to Discovery Plus, the latest investigation about Scream, the true story of the Gainesville Ripper, Discovery Plus, as well as Ed Gein, the real psycho, also the series on the Travel Channel, Haunting in the Heartland, and my 10 independent investigations are on Amazon Prime, and they can just search my name.
What's your next project?
The next project right now will be a Haunting on Brockway Street 2 that will release around Halloween, and several other projects to come on the bigger platforms.
All right, good luck to you. And where's Brockway? What state is that in?
That's Saginaw, Michigan.
Oh, back to that house, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, take care. Steve, thank you for being on the program. Really appreciate it. Stick with us all week long. We've got some great shows. We're going to talk about 5G tomorrow and why the airlines are so concerned. AT&T and Verizon have decided to halt their introduction around airports. We'll talk about that. For Dan Galante, Donna Walker, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Boros, Tim Banal, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.